being done in communities throughout Nebraska because of those anti-LGBTQ policies. We've got 1/3 of a new legislature. We'll have new rules, new committees, and new committee chairs. And as an advocate and as community members, that can seem kind of scary, but it's actually an opportunity for all of us now to elevate this issue and educate our new senators in the upcoming session. So now is the time to collect our allies and work together to reject gender-based oppression on anyone in Nebraska and honestly anywhere. Together, we can make our state safer, more just, and more equitable for all. So let's talk about how we do this. I'd like to introduce you to some of the organizations who are doing this advocacy work in Nebraska. And I'm so happy to have them join us today. So if I could have our panelists just go through, we'll start with Abby, Scout, and then Tina. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your organization, and what you do. And then immediately after that, I'm going to turn it over to Tina to do just a brief grounding, given recent events in our country and connecting that to why we're here today. I forget the order I just said. Abby, there we go.
Yeah, you asked me to go first, and that's nice to have it alphabetical by first name. So I am Abby Swatsworth. I use she, they pronouns. I am the executive director of Out Nebraska. We are Nebraska's statewide LGBTQ plus education and advocacy organization. So we're really leading the charge in advocacy work at the State House and in elevating the voices of our community all across the state. We actually, if we lived all in one community as LGBTQ plus people, we would be the third largest city in Nebraska. So it is a little bit of a misnomer that there are not LGBTQ plus people across the state because we do live everywhere. And it is really a part of the work that we're trying to do to help those people living in all the corners of our state be a part of the policymaking process by lifting up their voices and helping them engage. And so we're very excited about being a part of today's conversation. And I think Scout was next on the list to introduce.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. It's rare that Scout is second alphabetically, right? But yes, hi everyone, I'm Scout Richter, she, her pronouns. I am Senior Legal and Policy Counsel at the ACLU of Nebraska. Much of my personal work focuses on reproductive rights and gender equity. As a whole, the ACLU of Nebraska defends and protects the civil liberties and civil rights of all Nebraskans as guaranteed under both the United States Constitution as well as the Nebraska State Constitution. And we intentionally prioritize protecting and defending the rights of those who are traditionally underrepresented or unrepresented. And so that obviously includes LGBTQ Nebraskans. And I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and I will pass it to Tina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tina. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the interim executive director of Black and Pink National. So Black and Pink National serves system impacted LGBTQIA2S+ folks. The systems that we acknowledge are the prison industrial complex, the systems of racism, sexism, and heterosexism that are always at play within our society, the foster care system and family watch systems that oftentimes fail specifically LGBTQ+ folks, and then also people living with HIV and AIDS. So we support folks on the inside of the system and also on the outside. Omaha has become the home of Black and Pink work. It's kind of like the hub of it all, with the thought that if we can do transformational work in Nebraska, then we can really do transformational work anywhere. So we do a lot of different things, everything from housing to mail processing and pen pal programs. I do want to uplift that right now we are in the middle of our holiday card campaign, which you can find on our website in print and then send to someone on the inside. So we would love that if everyone here today would send a holiday card. And then also, if your organization is interested in sending holiday cards, please just reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat, and we have some printed that we're happy to share with partner organizations. Okay. So before we get started today, I did want to take a moment and hold space for everything that has happened just in the last couple of weeks, collectively over the last few years, with all of the anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric, bills, speech, laws, and the impact that that has had on folks. So before we jump into the conversation today, if we could just take a moment of silence, reflection, close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and hold space and think about sending as much light and love as possible as you can to all the folks all over the country that are working through this. Let's just take one really big breath together. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tina, for that. It was a really good reminder to center ourselves and, yeah, take a moment in a world that doesn't have a lot of space for that. So thank you. We're going to start our panel with Scout, who's going to lay out the national landscape for us of LGBTQ plus issues, what we're seeing across the country, what consequences we've seen as a result of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, and also talking just a bit about our past legislative history here in Nebraska. And then we'll go to Abby and then finish with Tina, but go ahead, Scout.
All right, thank you so much. So beginning in about 2016, there has been an increasing number of anti-LGBTQ legislation introduced in states across the country. As Aaron mentioned, this year alone, hundreds of anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced across the country. So of the almost 400 bills introduced over the last 4 years, about 39 have been enacted into law. And while this may seem like a relatively small number or small percentage of the introduced legislation that actually becomes law, the way these laws affect people's lives and empower and embolden anti-LGBTQ politicians in other states mean the harms are certainly widespread and significant. The bills that we've seen can be broken down into several categories. So first, restrictions in education. An example is Florida's Don't Say Gay law that bans the discussion of sexuality and gender through 3rd grade and even restricts what can be taught up through 12th grade. And a lot of the same justification that proponents have used to support this bill were some of the same things we heard time and time again from opponents to the sex ed standards here in Nebraska recently. There are also sports related bills. Idaho was actually the first state to pass a trans youth sports ban in 2021, and about 18 states have since followed suit. Most were specifically written to protect women in sports was like the justification, but some also restrict trans males from playing on male boys sports teams as well. We also see ID restrictions. Some states have moved to restrict trans and non-binary people from aligning or correcting ID documents. Oklahoma actually passed a law that banned non-binary gender markers from appearing on birth certificates recently. And then we also have laws that provide religious exemptions. So some states also have passed religious liberty laws in recent years that give people and organizations the right to refuse goods or services or employment to LGBTQ people on personal religious grounds. And then finally, we've seen healthcare restrictions, gender affirming care restrictions for trans youth that criminalize doctors who provide this highly individualized and specialized form of healthcare, including things like puberty blockers and hormone therapy. And then they also, some of these bills also seek to punish parents for supporting their kids in seeking this treatment. 3 states currently have passed those bans: Arkansas, Alabama, and Arizona. As of October 2022, Arkansas and Alabama's laws were temporarily blocked and are being challenged in court. And then Arizona's law is set to go into effect next year. So as I touched on a bit before, the harms of these laws are great. First, the laws themselves obviously cause harm. They prohibit students from participating in sports. They make it impossible for a person to get the documents that reflect their true identity. They restrict healthcare access. They use religion as a license to discriminate. But beyond that, they really work together to send the message and send it across jurisdictions that because of someone's gender identity or sexual orientation, they cannot fully participate or live as their full selves in society. And obviously that is the complete opposite message we should be conveying. So Aaron also asked me to touch a little bit on some of the recent legislation we've seen in Nebraska. So over the last biennium or 2 years, I did a quick inventory of introduced legislation in Nebraska. And over those 2 years, we had about 8 bills that were introduced to protect LGBTQ Nebraskans, and then a handful of bills attacking LGBTQ Nebraskans. And while the bad bills didn't move, neither did the protections, which obviously leaves LGBTQ Nebraskans particularly vulnerable in this landscape that is obviously increasingly hostile to LGBTQ rights. So as far as initial lessons learned, I think the primary one that I can start us off with is that, you know, we have stopped anti-LGBTQ legislation before, and we can do it again, working together to really stop those bad bills from passing. But I'll leave it at that, and then happy to jump back into the discussion.
Thanks, Scout. Man, hearing those numbers, right, is like, you know, it's happening, but sometimes there's those moments where you hear those numbers and it's just snaps you back into reality a bit. Yeah, thank you for that. It's perfect transition into Abby, who's going to talk about what we're expecting in the upcoming session, and also what do we need from you to help us and our neighbors in the upcoming session, because I think it's going to be pretty rough.
Thank you, Erin. I wish we could say that it wasn't going to be rough, but I think you're right. As you mentioned, we have 13 brand new senators who've not legislated before. We have 2 who were appointed last year and then elected, so they also have very little experience. And we have 1 who is revisiting service, who served previously and then sat out and has come back in. So of our brand new senators, only 1 has real experience. And that means we do have, excuse me, we do have the opportunity to do a lot of education. I'm really asking folks, if you are living in a district with a new senator, that you reach out and introduce yourself, talk about the issues that are important to you. I'm going to take a drink because suddenly I have a tickle. Yeah, I hate when that happens. We did maintain in the legislature 17 moderate to progressive votes, which should allow us to continue filibustering, but we really can't be certain of that. We can't count on it. And we know that at least one of those people is not with us on reproductive rights. Which is an LGBTQ issue because it impacts our community greatly. We do see that last year we played defense on some bills that we expect to come up again this year, namely things like private schools, curriculum and library censorship. We did see a bill last year that attempted to ban teaching on sex and race. And that bill was soundly defeated in committee. And we are really proud of that work. And we're going to need folks to once again be paying attention to those sorts of bills that maybe seem not expressly against the LGBTQIA plus community, but that really do impact our community greatly. We also saw some campus free speech extremism, religious exemptions for campus free speech, and that also has the potential to impact our community. So those are things we saw last year that we expect to play defense on again. And of course, we're facing an abortion ban, which will be its own public policy power hour. But things that we expect, because often issues come late to Nebraska, whether those are good or bad. And as we've already heard, there have been hundreds of anti-LGBT and anti-trans bills introduced. And we fully expect to see some of those bills coming to Nebraska this year. We do know there's legislation already being drafted to introduce a sports ban. And this is a really tough one. It can be hard for folks to understand why we wouldn't want a ban because there's some perspective of fairness. But trans women are women, trans girls are girls, and youth engage in sports activities, trans youth engage in sports activities for the same reason as any youth, which is, to be a part of a team, to push themselves physically, to be healthy, to have extracurricular activities that look good as they're furthering their education. And to deny trans girls or trans boys opportunities to play sports is to say that they cannot participate fully in life, as Scout has pointed out. We also really don't need this legislation in Nebraska because the Nebraska School Activities Association already has guidelines in place to allow trans athletes to petition to participate. So they may not be great rules. In fact, we're not really in favor of them, but they are already in place. And so legislating this would be like silly. It's searching a problem that doesn't exist. We also, based on the way that Governor-elect Pillen campaigned and some of his tweet messages, that we will see possibly a gender-affirming care ban for young people. He did tweet out specifically that when he was governor, he would ban sex reassignment and hormone therapy for young people. And so if he can find someone to carry it, if he behaves similarly to Governor Ricketts in really pushing his own agendas into the legislature, we expect to see that sort of a bill as well. And so really we're asking folks to, if you're not already, sign up to be on our e-news list where we send out action alerts. We do trainings on the bills that we are watching and send out information about when committee hearings are happening, how to submit comments or written testimony. There are a lot of different ways folks can be involved, and just knowing about the timing of what's going on can be really important. And there's just an easy email list. Yep, there's the link. Thank you. Jill, you're fabulous. We do hope to have some proactive work as well and not just play only defense. We're hoping to support a non-discrimination ban once again, an effort to ban conversion therapy. And I am really looking for someone to carry a bill that would enumerate SOGI in our anti-bullying legislation, because we're seeing a lot of activity at the individual school district level, whereby students are being harassed and bullied on their SOGI status, sexual orientation, gender identity expression status. And I just really feel like this should be a bipartisan issue that we may be able to move forward with. So hoping to work on that proactively as well. But yeah, it does take all of us being engaged in the process to lift up our voices as allies and as members of the queer community. And I'm just really suggesting that you reach out to your senators even before session starts. The new senators should have their email addresses in the next week or two. I would think, based on when their orientation was and things like that, that their email addresses should be coming sometime soon. And to get out and reach out to them, or reach out through their campaign websites, because they're still, those email addresses are usually still active also. So I think that's it. And I want to pass it along to Tina. And I just really appreciate being in this space with everyone today. I did actually want to lift up one more thing. I mean, Scout has pointed out that these bills have real impact on people's lives. And I think since 2016, we saw the Pulse shooting, and then we recently had the shooting in Colorado Springs, which makes me also say that gun violence is an LGBTQIA2S+ community issue, and that's something we'll be looking at working on as well. We do not want it to be easier for people to get and carry weapons that harm other folks. And so we always take a very intersectional perspective on the policy work that we do, because we've done some other things like stopping the build of a new prison and some things like that, that also impact our communities. But I think that's a great place to hand it off to Tina. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Scout and Abby, so much. I think it's really important to also note that while all of these things are being brought to legislature and people are talking about them, that rhetoric absolutely trickles down all over the state, all over the country. And then things like the Pulse shooting and the Club Q shooting are the result of that rhetoric. And it's so disheartening because, you know, while all of these anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ bills are, you know, being passed and brought up and being supported, unfortunately, like gun controls being ignored, you know, anti-violence laws are not, like, I feel like our priorities have gotten so messed up in the grand scheme of everything. And then also the real impact then comes to the young people and the queer folks, because all they're hearing this hateful rhetoric being spouted from every single direction. And, you know, their mental health struggles and their self-love and appreciation struggles, you know, in a world that is already so hard to exist in authentically, we just continuously make it harder. So, you know, in addition to the actual legislation and the laws, there's all of the other baggage that comes along with that for folks that hold all these identities. And really, like, we're always leaving people out of the conversation. You know, Abby, thank you for bringing intersectionality up to the top. Like, that is so important in the work that we do, because we work with folks who experience all of the systems, right? Heterosexism, sexism, racism, criminalized poverty, like all of those things come together. And the more marginalized your identity, just the more the impact is every single day. You know, the folks that have those most intersectional identities are the ones that are most impacted by this like slow incremental change. And also folks that are incarcerated are constantly left out of the conversation because it's hard to get to their voices. You know, that's one of the things I'm most proud of working at Black and Pink, is the way that we are able to engage with our inside members and get their voices in studies. We've been collaborating with Lambda Legal, and we have this amazing study about to come out of incarcerated folks. So, you know, the slow change is really hard for the folks that are experiencing it and just trying to survive. You know, we often leave those most vulnerable people out of the conversation. So I'm appreciative of everyone here and all of the work that they do around policy. And I also want to invite you all, Abby and Scout, if you have anything else to add about the impact of the legislation and the way that it shows up. The Trevor Project just did a really disheartening study about LGBTQ plus youth and how they are at such risk when it comes to just simply staying alive because of all the things that they've heard about themselves. And I can actually find that and share it with you all if you would be interested. Anything that you all wanted to add to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I will add that, you know, there are there's a very, very floor kind of protection for folks through the Bostock decision of the Supreme Court that disallows discrimination and employment based on sex, which was defined to include sexual orientation and gender identity. And housing law is written very similarly to employment law. So it has been expanded rather easily into housing. And our own Nebraska Equal Opportunities Commission has stated that they will take cases of housing and employment discrimination. But, you know, with all of the rhetoric that's out there, with all of the legislation being introduced all the time, people don't realize they have protections at all. We hear constantly reports from folks who are experiencing discrimination and harassment. And we recommend that they visit with the NEOC. We recommend that they reach out to ACLU Nebraska if they feel that case warrants it. We recommend the Lincoln Human Rights Commission. But yeah, part of the impact is that folks don't know that there's any protections for them at all, because all they hear is the constant noise of, you know, anti-queer and anti-trans messaging. And we're actually hearing messaging that we have not heard in years. This language that promotes the idea that queer and trans folks are dangerous, that we're predators, or that we are groomers, is really, really dangerous rhetoric. And I think we have got to start holding elected officials accountable when we hear that language coming from them. And we just cannot sit silently when that is being spoken in our state, because we just know the direct impact that it has on folks. And yes, Tina is so correct that our young people are really struggling. sort of feel like things are better than they used to be when we were kids, but in a lot of ways they're worse. And so it's vital to stay engaged in this work. And I'll just let anybody else add that wants to.
I would just echo what both Tina and Abby said, that all this rhetoric and things being spouted from different directions, coupled with we still have like the antiquated marriage definition in our state constitution. We have different forms and laws that still use antiquated gender distinction. So couple that with the rhetoric, it just continues to send that message. So I think there's a comment like, oh, well, it's just a form, or it's just something that's not, they all work together to send that message and to add to that burden and load that LGBTQ people are forced to endure. So I would just add that.
Yeah.
It's a good connection to one of the questions in the chat. So I'm going to take that question and take what you've said and add it all together. Abby, you had brought up accountability for when people use really harmful language that perpetuates harm in these communities. And I think that's a really important point. And I think a lot of people who want to be allies might not have the right language, the right knowledge to know how best to support, particularly, our LGBTQIA plus youth. And so that is one question, and links to another question posed in the Q&A, which is, what would be most helpful for mobilizing LGBTQIA plus youth? And, is there a forum? Is there a link? Is there a space for young people? I'll just let anyone take that because you're all experts.
Do you see my face? I'm like, wow, that's a really, really tough question, because young people try to organize and they kind of get smacked down. I mean, we saw this year the reaction at Grand Island Northwest District in regard to their school newspaper and organizing to report on issues that impact their LGBTQ plus youth community. But I would say that there are a lot of schools that have GSA clubs or pride clubs or organizations. And we've been doing some more work with those organizations in terms of like helping to educate young people about how they can advocate for themselves, whether that's like talking with their principals or at the school board level or with district folks, just, helping them know you can organize, you can, speak up, but it's difficult. It can be really, really difficult. So there is always GLSEN, Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, which has some amazing resources and really encourages young people to do activities like Day of Silence and that sort of organizing around issues in the community. And I feel like young people have a place at committee hearings too, if they are well supported. That's the other thing. We have to be so careful about requiring folks to share their trauma in order to be heard. But I applaud young people who sometimes really want to speak up and who get involved in that way too. So Scout, there's a school district that says they don't allow any clubs, and so they don't have to have a GSA. So that one really makes my blood boil. But yes, you're right. They are by law supposed to allow GSA clubs.
Yeah, I think that because of safety, I am always a little hesitant to get a bunch of young queer people together. I just feel like right now that's scary. So I would task all of the parents and adults um, to be a part of that movement, to get involved with PFLAG, to start your own group. You know, a lot of young queer people don't have affirming families. So I think like living out, living authentically, being really loud, like now is not the time to be quiet about where you stand on any of these issues. So I think like if all of the adults that are on this call really purposefully reached out to young people that they know that have just come out or you know, even, and not even young people. Like I also want to acknowledge that a lot of people realize that they were queer in the pandemic. And there's a lot of, you know, grown-ups that are also in this process. So I think it has to be a community approach for safety reasons right now. So what are the ways that, you know, we can get together? I know that there's going to be a vigil on Sunday night, and I will find that information and drop it in the chat for Club Q. Yes, Tori, thank you for that. So there is an Open Arms Trans Social Group. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for that resource. I will definitely share it. But I think we have to come together as a community and support one another. We can't task young people with doing it on their own because that's just not safe right now. And I also think like getting involved, sitting on boards, you know, going to GLSEN events. Youth Pride is an amazing way to show up and to support young people, and to just support everyone. You know, what they've done with Heartland Pride is incredible, and I always encourage people to attend Youth Pride, even if they don't have necessarily like a young person that they're taking. I think it's really important to show up so that they can see you. You know, just existing often as a queer adult inspires young people in a way that you don't even recognize at the time. So yeah.
I'm wondering, well, actually, I have lots of always wondering. There was a question in the chat. We've just elected John Frederickson into the legislature, the first like openly gay man, is married to a man, has a child. You know, it's a really beautiful and hopeful moment, and he's such a wonderful ally. And so I'm wondering if you have hope from that election, and I want to build that question out to just say, who else are our allies that you feel in the legislature, and how can we encourage our senators to be stronger allies? Like maybe we know that they're supportive, but they haven't been, you know, as vocal or as confident in their allyship and advocacy.
I mean, I would say that if there are any senators who want to show up and be allies and are unsure how, I recognize that there's always some fear around saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And I always want to gently remind people that that fear is nothing compared to, you know, existing as a queer person in Nebraska. So that's like a loving, get over it, okay? And also, I know that there are so many people in Nebraska that have the wealth of knowledge and expertise that would give it away. You know, if there's anyone on this call that wants to get some mentorship and coaching around the language and things, I know that Abby and myself would absolutely jump at that opportunity. And really, I always tell folks that advocacy and allyship takes practice. It's like a muscle. You have to strengthen it. It gets easier every single time, but you have to take that first shot. You have to go for it, and just show up for people. And nobody really cares if you say the wrong thing. You apologize, you take accountability for it, and then we just keep moving because we have plenty of enemies. We don't need to create them within this group.
I love hearing you say that, Tina. That's just really beautiful. I think we recognize when people are trying and honor that effort and, you know, continue to like feed that idea. Uh, have a meeting scheduled with Senator-elect Frederickson. I do think he will be active. We doubled the number of queer folk in the legislative body. Now we have two. It's a, we have we could almost have what is it, a caucus. So that's exciting. It's still not enough, but it is very exciting. I think we also have allies in George Duncan in Lincoln, and Danielle Conrad, definitely in Carol Blood, and I think there are some bipartisan supporters who could be supporters if we find a way to activate them, right? Even if their activation is only quietly behind the scenes with their fellow senators, and sharing stories about their own families, or just, their perspectives, even if they don't necessarily come out loud and proud on the floor, but they're willing to talk. I think that carries value also. So yeah, we're just all about trying to activate folks, and I'm trying to meet with as many of the newly elected senators as I can. So yeah, just, ask your state senator where they stand on the issue, push them on that. When you contact them, if this issue is important, if these issues are important to you, say that, and then ask them where they stand and why. And then, let us help you do that. So say
Yeah.
that. And what did I say that needed to be said again, Jill?
It was the Tina saying,
Oh.
sorry about the advocacy, and there's nothing more fearful than actually living that experience. So I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah, it was.
I would also say that if you do have an affirming senator, show that appreciation as often as you can. Like, I'm so lucky that Wendy DeBoer is my senator. And, I try to send her a thank you card because it's also important that we uplift the folks that are doing the work and actually helping move things forward. So like Abby said, engage with your senators, actually talk to them, because I think it does get you a lot farther than we realize often.
Mhm.
And I would say, even if you know that your senator is anti, it still is worth talking to them, because a lot of times we hear them say things like, oh, well, no one has talked to me about that issue or expressed that view. And it's because they know where they, people don't as often reach out to them because they know where they stand, but it still is worth getting your voice out there and letting them know, so they can't just say, oh, well, no one has told me that. And I think it's important to both the supportive senators, the not supportive senators, and everyone in the middle. So no one should be off limits from our contact.
My senator is Megan Hunt, so I occasionally just like to text her and be like, "You're amazing. Love that outfit. You're killing it. Great work." Yeah, I mean, that's such an important point. All of those points together. I always tell folks, particularly with new senators, it is absolutely your right as a citizen to email them and tell them what you care about. And something that I think is productive in that conversation too is to say, listen, if you have questions about this issue, I am more than happy to sit down and talk with you. I am more than happy to share my experience or not, or just tell you why me as your constituent, why I as your constituent believe that this is the right policy. I will also say that working in policy, and I'd love to hear from you about this, because we had mentioned intersectionality earlier. I've been pleasantly surprised occasionally by the connections that senators can make to come to the the right conclusion, but they're just not doing it maybe through the lens that we'd like. So I'm wondering if there's examples in our past legislative history of folks who have come around, and maybe an example of why that the productive conversation that happened before that got them to where we needed them to be, if anyone has any of those.
I have a little bit of what might be an example. When Senator Stinner was the chair of appropriations, he very much had the perspective that budget bills were not the place for social policy. And when someone tried to sneak into the appropriations bill language that would defund schools who were teaching sex education, he quietly yanked that out of there so fast that nobody even knew that it had been going on. Like, because he was like, this does not belong here. This is the wrong place to do this. And, so and who knows how many other like strange things tried to get into the budget that he just sort of like did not allow. So that'll be interesting. We'll have a new chairperson in appropriations this year. And, once we figure out who that is, I'm going to them to talk about that issue, to say, look, just like the budget is not where these things belong. And I really counted on Senator Stinner, and we're going to count on you. And so, but yeah, I think that's an example of somebody that maybe wasn't doing that out of perspective that we would think of, but was doing the right thing.
I'm going to add context to that because I was in the lobby the day that got drafted and was being passed around, and it really was someone pulled him out of off the floor and was like, "Have you seen this?" and got him riled up about it. So like that's also like a way in, right? Senators are juggling a lot, and so if you notice something or hear something, it is honestly possible that your senator has not heard of it. And so don't think that, remember, like, you're the expert, your life and experience matters, and you are more than, able to share that, and don't think that they know, because they might not. I just wanted to add that I just remember that happening. I can like distinctly remember him being like, "What?" So.
And this isn't necessarily a specific senator example, but I think it just to add, I think there are so many harms of these anti-LGBTQ pieces of legislation that there's room for so many different perspectives to that may resonate more with certain senators. So like, if you don't care about human rights, here's the economic argument about why we shouldn't be an unwelcoming. So I think there's just a lot of room for different perspectives depending on the senator you're trying to reach. So.
Yeah. It's all just such a mess. I mean, particularly this next session I actually do think there's all these articles, right, being published about the departure of institutional knowledge and the fact that we have all these new senators. And I have chosen, and I just want to give you this as well, I have chosen to be optimistic about that and view it as an opportunity for actually, citizen voices for your experiences to be elevated above the sort of way that the legislature normally works, which is to say, well, this is how we've done it in the past. So think of it as being sort of a blank slate, to make sure that your voice is heard, and the things that you care about are made important as well. So just being respectful of everyone's time, we've got about a couple more minutes. So I want to end on a more optimistic note than I'm usually known for. So what has given you hope in your advocacy throughout, the onslaught of attacks on LGBTQIA plus individuals, particularly young people? Like, what's giving you hope? What's bringing you life right now?
Yeah, I can start. For me, I feel so fortunate that I've always been able to be surrounded by amazing young people, and young people themselves always give me hope. It's, they're so smart. They're so much smarter than I was in the 90s. They also have tiny computers in their hands. So, but I love how empowered young people are. And I think if you do lose hope, I always tell people volunteer doing something that fills your cup, because it puts everything back in perspective. And then also spend time with young people. If you do not have a mentee, get one. If you're not engaged in organizations that work with youth, please, 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 for your own well-being, get involved, because that always keeps me going. And another thing that has given me a lot of hope is watching my friends who I would say in the past have been a bit neutral about different things, and these past few years have really opened their eyes. So watching my friends who I would say were not like civically engaged or politically active, suddenly starting groups to support progressive school board candidates, like that kind of stuff really sets my soul on fire. So I love watching people who have had the luxury of staying neutral, stop staying in that place. So, yeah.
The thing that's bringing me joy right now is my 2 grandchildren. And also the young adults that I work with on my team. I'm 54. They're half my age or and they do bring me hope. They are so intelligent and so thoughtful in their perspectives on issues. And we had a conversation this morning about why do we have to have a legal gender? Like, why does the government need to know what's in my pants? And I thought that was I was like, you're right. You are so right. And so there are so many fascinating, smart, progressive things coming from young adults and young people, that and Tina's right. We have to stay plugged into that and help lift up those voices. And and do make time for yourself. Like, rest is revolutionary, right? And we have to make the revolution so joyful that no one can resist. So don't burn out. Take time. Do the things that fill your cup, because you can only be useful to the movement if you have that energy for yourself and caring for yourself. So, yeah.
I would say the thing that gives me hope in this work is the fact that I kind of said this in my opening thing, but we have beat these kinds of attacks before. And, the rhetoric is stronger on the other side and increasingly hostile. But as Abby and Tina said, we have more people who were traditionally stayed silent, speaking out. We have the youth engaged. So it gives me hope that all working together and all bringing our perspectives and our time and talent, we'll be able to stop this horrible anti-LGBTQ legislation again, with everyone working together, as well as resting and recharging and all the things that Abby said as well. So.
And hydrating.
And hydrating.
You got to stay hydrated. I mean, you really do. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us. This brought me a lot of hope and joy. It was a really good way to end the week. If anyone else has had an exhausting week, being able to come together and talk about that joy and also hold space for each other in this work. Yeah, I don't think I can work after this. I'm giving everyone the rest of the day off. I've decided in my limited power, you all can take the rest of the day off. But before you take the rest of the day off, know a few things. This recording and all of the links that have been shared in the chat, all those really helpful links, will all be shared to everyone's emails. And you know, before you take that afternoon off, I would encourage you to remember that your senator works for you. Also, your school boards work for you. Your city council members work for you. This work is expansive, even though we've been focused on the legislature here today. All of those elected officials work for you. So contact them, let them know that you support gender equity, let them know that you support LGBTQIA plus rights, and you want them to stand firm with you in opposing bigotry and any hate that harms Nebraskans. So I'm always happy to connect anybody to, I mean, you can find your senator, but if you need help negotiating other legal or government entities, I'm happy to help folks navigate that. And up here on the screen, join us for our next Public Policy Power Hour for freedom from violence. Sign up for our policy updates and emails. Please, please, please follow all of these amazing organizations and help support their work as well. And yeah, thank you. And if anyone has any final thoughts, final breathe, send you out into the afternoon I've just given you by whatever power is not invested in me. But otherwise, thank you so much to everyone for joining us, and please connect with these wonderful folks. Tina, did you have something?
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, I just wanted to say my closing is always rest is a requirement, not a reward. So take
Take a nap
right now.
It's a beautiful day for a nap, honestly. A bit cloudy and cold. Perfect. Yeah.
It is. Thank you so much to the Women's Fund, and Jill, you're a rock star in the chat. Thank you.
All right, everyone.